The end of the ski season in a beautiful corner of the Alps that produced an Austrian sporting legend very much in the mould of Jochen Rindt and Niki Lauda. He never won the World Championship, but he experienced some of the sport's most dramatic and tragic events. Our legend of Formula One is Gerhard Berger.
Fearless, fast and spectacular. A race winner, but also a solid, supportive teammate. Gerhard Berger had it all, but is also happy to admit he was just a mountain boy.
Gerhard, great to see you. And
nice to see you too.
wow, what a view, what an environment. And this is the sort of environment you grew up in as a kid. And how on earth did you turn into a Formula One driver and not a sort of Franz Klammer instead?
Yeah, it's a good question, because here really we start first to ski before we start to walk. I remember well as a boy going to school with skis, and yeah, that's our nation sport.
How good a skier did you become, and how good a skier are you these days?
I skied a lot as a boy, but now the last 25 years I'm basically living in Monaco, so I'm coming here for holiday. But so it's limited time where I stay on skis. But me, I always was in direction of motorsport, of cars and bikes and engines.
Berger is a man of contrasts. His maturity and experience would make him a team owner and give him a prominent role in the FIA. But he was also a dangerous man to be around, the most notorious practical joker in the pit lane. Everyone was a potential victim.
I like to laugh. I like to have a laugh. I like people enjoying. I like to be happy.
Anyone not see the funny side?
I remember well, one time we went diving with Ron Dennis, and we've been down in 15 meters watching fishes, and I was just on top of him swimming, and I was bored, and so I closed his bottle slowly, oxygen. Suddenly I saw him going up like a rocket, so he didn't find it funny, but for me it was looking good.
What were the stories with you and Ayrton, throwing car keys out of the window and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, for a while, when we go in the evening, when we went back to the hotel, and after testing, we still had a bit adrenaline left, and we had this idea to go to close put the key out of the under driving, put the key out, put it out from the window, get the steering lock on, and still having a bit speed on it. So all these things, you know, you do when you're younger. A lot of things I don't find so funny anymore now, but at the time it was.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. It's with some trepidation we'll go inside then, having got all that stuff out of the way, and talk about the serious side of your racing career.
Gerhard Berger could afford to be light-hearted about life. He not only grew up in beautiful surroundings, but his father ran what would become a very prosperous haulage business. He seemed almost to have stumbled upon a Formula One career that would include 210 races, all the pressure and expectation of driving for Ferrari, and the humbling experience of partnering Senna at McLaren. He would also be at the heart of some of the sport's most traumatic moments. The beginnings of his racing career were not entirely with parental consent.
I was mechanic. I was still in school with mechanic school, and so officially I was in school. Then unfortunately I won the race, and I was in the newspaper. The whole thing at home, arrived at home, and yeah, well, there we are.
But it was the start of your racing career, and progress through, well, Formula 3 in particular, the German Championship, European Formula 3, and the European Touring Car Championship as well. Great years with Schnitzer and BMW. How much fun were those years, and very competitive as well, weren't they?
First, I have to say, after this first race, for 1.5 years was nothing, because my father stopped everything. I had no money, so I couldn't move. And already before, I was always dreaming to go karting, and I was never allowed to go karting, so I couldn't do anything until I was 21 years old. So I was very late when I really started racing, and it started always Alpha Sud, just for fun. But then it went very quick, and I arrived very quick in the Schnitzer team, as example, and I've been in the right hands, and I had a fantastic time with these guys.
But all through that, the ambitions were Formula One, and the opportunity came with...
Yes and no.
Yeah?
I I think I'm very different to many of all the other drivers. Of course, I would like to go karting. My father didn't allow it. I was always dreaming to do motorsport, but I never had Formula One in my radar. Formula One was for me too far away. For me, all what I want to do is a hobby. All what I want to do is growing up in the mountains, go skiing in the summer, go a bit racing and have a bit fun on a racetrack, because I felt that something what I like to do, could do well. As I did not have the possibility, I bought an Alfa Sud. At the time, there was a European Championship on the Alfa Sud Cup. I bought it because it was an accident car. Everybody say, well, the car is completely destroyed, so I bought it for nothing. I prepared it by myself, just to go and for fun racing. Then I was in this Alfa Sud. I didn't dream of anything more until Alfa Romeo came to me and said, you're doing very well, and we think you should do something more than Alfa Sud. I said, what should I do? I have no money. They say, well, we give you free Formula 3 engines. And that was my thing, okay, so let's go Formula 3, because I get free engines. So then I was in Formula 3. I had still never thought about Formula 1. So I was not one of these guys all day long looking just to Formula 1. How can I arrive there? What I have to do? No, I just did what came along. Of course, then I've been in Formula 3. At one stage, I say, well, there is a good possibility to that I, especially with BMW, that I could end up in Formula 1. And then I remember well when Günther Schmidt from RTS asked me, and I said, well, I have one car with Winkelhock. I have a second car. I like very much you driving. Would you like to race a Formula 1 race? I said, well, yeah, that would be great. So I asked BMW if they give you an engine, because I have the car, but I don't have an engine. So I phoned Dieter, and I say, Dieter, do you think you can borrow me for 2 races an engine, because I could do a Formula 1 car? So it was not this typical career. It was very different. Starting with 21-year-old, being never clear what I really want to achieve. But it came out very well.
What was that first Formula One experience like, though, at the Austrian Grand Prix with ATS? What was the Formula One debut like as an experience?
My first test was first set in a day when the 24 hours for Spa was going on. It was qualifying 24 hours Spa, and I had the opportunity to go to Zandvoort to do my first Formula One test. So I said, I'm gonna be hopefully in time here, but I have to do this. So anyway, we set it up, and I went to Zandvoort. And again, all what I did from 21 years old until my first test in Formula 1 was basically Alfa Sud, 120 horsepower, Formula 3, 160 horsepower. That's basically the strongest cars I've driven. So I arrived in Zandvoort and I had a 1,000 horsepower monster there, going testing. Never seen the circuit before, 1,000 horsepower. Didn't. So I say, well, if I want to do anything there and to make a little bit an impression, I just went out and I looked where the breaking point of Piquet and the guys, or the quick guys, was in the first corner, where you just passed the start-finish line, or the bits where all the people was watching. I just remember the point, and then the third or fourth lap, and I came down, I just closed my eyes, and I said, just go until the point where the others break, and that's what I have to do, and get around the corner. And I remember well, it was first when I come to the straight line, I could not believe how much power it was going on, and how the things kept pushing, and it was already 300 k's and more, and this thing still was pushing more than the Formula 3 in the first gear. And then it came to this point, the breaking point. But I just did it, what I had to do. And I remember when I came into the pits, Günther Schmidt said, well, you're braking very late in first corner. I said, yeah, okay. But I was, basically the car was driving me, not me, the car.
Yeah. So how would you describe yourself in those days as a driver? You sort of seat of the pants, instinctive, a little bit mad, or
everything
what?
Natural. Yeah. Everything natural. I mean, I'm a mountain boy, and my racing, I was everything natural.
But 84, you'd arrived in Formula One, you'd had your first experience with ATS, but at the end of that season, there was a road accident. What exactly happened?
Well, it happened not far from here, 10 kilometers from 15 kilometers from here, where I had my workshop and where I was living. And in the evening, I had just to go back to the company to do something, because the next day I was supposed to go doing some testing for Macau, for Schnitzer. And just when I went back from my company, a car went out from a petrol station, and the guy just didn't see me, and I tried to move onto the left side, but he catched me in the back, and I spun, and I spun through a breach down the river, and unfortunately I had no seatbelt on, and I flew out from the side window, and I broke my neck, and I broke my back, and I landed just on the rocks next to the river. The car was hanging on the trees just on top of me, and I've been so lucky, because the funny thing is, here on this road in the night, you have no traffic usually at all, except the people that are living there, because everybody's moving on the motorway, but it's just parallel. And then this evening, there was 2 guys on the motorway, German guys, and it was helicopter doctors, what was coming back from holiday, and they've been hungry, and they said, let's exit here, let's see, to find a restaurant to eat something. And this was the car exactly behind me. So when they came down to me, and I was conscious, and I said, well, I have big problem in my head, and I have very much pain in my back. They immediately realized that I have a neck problem. So the way they didn't move me, the way how they treat me, and they had even infusions in the car. So when the ambulance arrived, I was already hanging on infusions, and I remember well, the ambulance one put me on their bed, and the guys said to him, most probably he's gonna die if you put him on here, because it looks like he has a very high back injury. And then the guys went back and picked up a special bed for this kind of situations, and that's how I left the place. So to have at 11 o'clock in the night the luck to have 2 doctors behind you from helicopter emergency thing with the equipment in the car, you know, it's something coming from here. I just think.
But it could and should in many ways have cost you your life. Certainly it seemed that your racing career was over at that point, or what sort of state were you in?
The doctor came to me after the first 2 days when kidney and everything was starting to work again reasonable, and he says to me, Mr. Berger, we have two things, 2 possibilities. Either we put you on plaster and you're gonna be for 6-8 months in plaster, and or we do an operation. But I have to tell you, it's the first time that we are doing this operation, because it's very new coming in, where we have to open the throat in the front and connecting with screws the vertebras in the back. It's a new way, but as I tell you, it's the first time as we are doing it, and it's as we have to open everything from the front, all the nerves to the face and the things is going. It's risky. After, if we don't have a problem, you are recovering much better. I say, but I have to recover much better because I have to go back racing. And he was still laughed to me and said, no, forget racing, you can forget, that's it.
It seemed that Berger's Formula One career could be over before it had really started, but he was determined to beat the odds in a big way, and he would need to do it again as his career reached its prime. Gerhard Berger had sustained severe neck and back injuries in a road accident just weeks before he was due to advance his Formula One career with Arrows. The recuperation would surely be long and painful, but Berger had no intention of lying in a darkened room and reflecting on his miraculous survival. Instead, he was determined to convince team boss Jackie Oliver that he was fit and ready for the new season.
2 days after the operation, I had my friend here, but was also dealing with Jackie, and I said, how we are looking with Jackie? And he says, well, he thinks you are dead. We are out of the game, you know, but anyway, let's recover and let's be happy that you are still alive. I say, no. Can you help me to get out of the bed? And so he helped me to get out of the bed, and I was forbidden to get out of the bed, and I got black in front of my eyes, back to the bed, out, in, out, in, out. Anyway, the 3rd or 4th time, on the 2nd day when I go out, the doctor just came in, had a big look to me, and I said, well, can you do this again? He picked up the other doctors. I said, he's standing. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I'm standing. So I signed something, and I left the hospital, I think, about 6 or 7 days after the operation. And I looked like a monster. I had no hairs. I had holes in my head because that's where I had screws in for the weight to stretch the things. I had everything open here. I was like this because I lost all my weight. I could just walk on. Disaster. So I said to my friend, I said, the only chance we have now is we have to go visit Jackie Oliver. Because he thinks I'm dead, I'm not dead, and if we still won't get the place for March, we have to do something. So we flew to England. I could hardly, every 10 minutes I had to hold myself, not do the thing. We fixed with Jackie in a restaurant, not the thing. I had some plaster around here to hold my head because the musculars all was gone. Before Jackie arrived, I had a zip here, put the plaster away. I had my hands all the time in my head like this because the muscle was not working, you know. So Jackie arrived to say, hello, Jackie. I said, everything is fine, you know, I'm gonna be ready. You know? So Jackie looked to me, I couldn't believe, you know, all a bit strange. But I docked myself back again into business, you know, and finally ended up to signing with Jackie for my next season. And I did the first race in Rio, I think it was Rio.
In 1985 and 1986, Gerhard Berger was still combining his burgeoning Formula One career with touring car commitments in Europe. He had a solid season with Arrows before moving to Benetton for a 1986 season that had its frustrations, but also produced his first Formula One victory at the penultimate race in Mexico.
First, we have to say with the Benetton, we had an extremely competitive car. I was leading already in Celtic, in Monza, in different circuits already. Okay, we had technical failures. That's why we didn't have won anything at this stage already. But we've been already a couple of times in a winning position. And this time the tire played a little bit into our favor, but we've been very quick at this time. We've been anywhere, somebody always on podium course.
What was the feeling for you of nailing that first win?
Again, like my career, it just came. I remember well, I think it was Rosberg there. Keke says to me, hey, make a big party today. These days are coming very seldom. You know, these days are very rare. Yeah. He was absolutely right. But for me, it was great, fantastic. Okay, let's go for the next one.
Because also by that time, you'd agreed to join Ferrari the following year. And once again, how was that deal put together if you were the man who was handling all the negotiations, which are always a little bit complicated?
Can you imagine a mechanic coming from the mountains, just knowing Ferrari from the history, from the television, get invited by Mr. Ferrari to see him, not a bad thing. So I drive myself down. I had an Audi 100, I remember well, down to Maranello. We fixed on a petrol station. We met at a petrol station. I remember they put me in the back of a car, put a towel over to cover me, not that nobody could see me, and they ran into the Fiorano, to the racetrack, to the office of Mr. Ferrari. I remember I came into a very dark room. I was just, and there was sitting Mr. Ferrari and Piero Ladi, his son. It was one of the greatest moments in my whole career because coming into this dark room, seeing this Mr. Ferrari. So it took us not long where he says, I want you to drive for me. And I say, well, yeah, and I would like to drive for you.
And in racing terms, was there any doubt in your mind that that was the right move at that time? Because they weren't at their strongest at that point.
Again, I've never been somebody clear planning. I always was emotional. And you know, we Austrians, we're very close to Italians. You know, we are between Germany and Italy, but especially here, we have a very strong tendency to Italy. We love them. So for me, Ferrari, Italy, I just didn't look what the car is doing.
Gerhard Berger wins the Japanese Grand Prix for Ferrari, their first Grand Prix win since Germany 1985.
I got a very, very good relationship with Ferrari in all sense. They liked me as a personality, they liked my speed. I liked the Italians anyway, and on top of it, Ferrari. I was very happy there. We didn't win enough to really fight for the championship because sometimes we had reliable problems and we came too late into the game. The train was already gone. But I think the last 5-7 races we've been the strongest combination in the field, and everything looked just great.
Now, look forward to 1988. You're in a very good shape for that.
Yeah, we will try hard over the winter to improve the car again, and then we try to catch the championship next year.
1988 was a season dominated by the McLarens of Senna and Prost with their Honda power. Ferrari were struggling, and there was a further blow in the summer with the death of Enzo Ferrari, the iconic figurehead of the organisation. Just 3 weeks after his death came the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and Ferrari and Berger would respond with an emotional victory.
Ferrari wins! Ferrari second! And the first Italian Grand Prix since the death of the great Enzo Ferrari has seen his beloved scarlet cars from Maranello honour his memory with first and second places, and it's a truly happy crowd.
I have to say, Ayrton was leading the race. Then was the accident with Schlesser.
Senna! Ayrton Senna spins! And into the lead goes Berger. What a fantastic situation!
But the problem with Ayrton was he had a fuel consumption problem. He had to slow down already, and I was catching it already.
You were pressuring.
Yeah, I was starting to make pressure. He had to risk everything to get by, pass by and not lose time with Schlesser. And then, unfortunately, he had to, or lucky for me, he had an accident and I could win the race. And I remember when I was on the podium and I could see when they all was coming, it was an impressive situation.
Yeah. 1989, Nigel Mansell arrived.
Yeah.
And
you remember this
I
well,
do, yeah. Describe him as a teammate, because he's
difficult guy.
yeah, difficult and different. Yeah.
Yeah, not a bad guy, you know. But in the end of the day, he's very selfish, very himself. You know, it's him and nothing else. But strong character. Mm. He was physically very strong. When we had fuel, and the steering was very heavy, he was very strong. And when he had some good days, he'd been physically very strong, fantastic racer. The rest was whinging but he had a special character. And actually, yeah, I'm happy that I could experience him also for a year.
Yeah.
1989 would start with 10 straight retirements for Berger's Ferrari. But the manner of his exit from the third race of the season, the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, is one of the most remarkable stories of Grand Prix survival.
Oops, and big problems. That was something broken on the car for sure. Big crash by Berger. Without any doubt, it went straight on.
And, oh, heavens above, this is dreadful. There are no words that can add to this appalling picture.
I know everything in details. There was one moment I've been unconscious, but that was maybe talking about a minute or something. The rest all I know.
I mean, do you have a thought process during that period? What sort of things were
It was
were you
interesting
aware of?
because I turned in to Tamburello and I immediately realized something not right, and I saw the right front light on the car, and then I immediately say, well, I have a left rear suspension broken or a puncture in the left rear. And I looked even quick in the thing, I couldn't see. So I did not realize that the front wing was broken. That was the reason. But I was expecting something from the left rear was coming. Then I saw that the car doesn't turn and go straight. Then I saw the wall coming. Then I remember still that I had full fuel. I said, this speed, this angle, and with the fuel in the back, that's not gonna be funny. And I'm telling this in this way because it shows how much in a brain goes in such a short time of period. Because when you look in the television, from the moment the turn in and the wall, it's a couple of seconds, or maybe even less. But it's like a slow motion film. I have to say I had a lot of heavy pain. And honestly, I thought my body is completely burnt because everything was in fuel. At the time, the fuel was very aggressive. And it was difficult to say what is burned, what is just acid or whatever, but it felt like the body is burned. That was very painful. It took quite a while until they had me then back in the ambulance. It was quite funny because there was the nurses cleaning me everywhere, and the hands was completely open. But the biggest burning I had on my balls, And I remember well how to explain that he should put this fuel off there. So anyway, it was already quite a little bit funny there, but for the size of accident, it was quite minimum what I had.
Oh, astonishing.
Yeah. It hurts for a moment. It was looking bad, especially in the hands, but the rest of it was reasonable.
What were the next few days like as you came to terms with what you've been through?
People called me how I am, and usual discussion, but the one was interesting, sad one. Ayrton called me, and next day and said, "How are you?" I said, "Well, I'm okay." And he says, "Gerhard, yeah, what's happened?" And I say, "I don't know exactly yet what's happened, but one thing is sure, this bloody wall there, one day somebody gonna die in it, because it's much too close to the racetrack, you know, you're so fast there, and if you have a technical failure there, you're dead." A couple of weeks later, Ayrton and myself walked from the pit to the place where I had the accident to see how to move this wall. And we both looked over the wall, and we both said, well, there's this river in the back. There's not actually, the land falls down to the river, nothing really you can do. We did not think about putting a chicane or something, we just concentrated on how to move the wall. And we were back and said, well, not a lot we can do here. Yeah. It's what it is. And exactly where we looked, this is the place where he died.
Yeah.
It's really
5 years later. Yeah, the irony was
exactly
clear.
where we looked over the thing. I would say, well, it's not possible to move the wall. That's exactly where he died.
Did the experience change you as a driver, your psychological approach?
Yeah, a lot.
In what way?
I think this was definitely a break in my ability to take risk. I think I've been over the top before. I think I've been anyway somebody what was always in danger to hurt himself, because I remember well in Hockenheim when I figure out that on the straight you can overtake well with 2 wheels on the grass, because the straight line is in the old Hockenheim was quite narrow. So if somebody positioned the car in the middle, very difficult to use the slipstream. So I remember I positioned 2 cars on the grass, and it worked. And 2 laps later I came, I think, with Tambay at the time, and another one, and I said, let's try the 4 wheels on the grass, and you go 300 there or whatever, and of course it doesn't work, you know. And I remember spinning between the cars and everybody. So what I want to say is I always was open to take risks, and I enjoyed it. From this moment on, I say, well, this can hurt very much, and it's time to be careful in certain times, because it can be finished very quick. And to be honest, I think after this accident, I never reached anymore the level I had before.
Towards the end of 1989, there was a brief indication of what might have been at Ferrari. A couple of second places and a much-needed victory at Estoril. None doubted Berger's resilience and talent, and for 1990, he would move on to perhaps the biggest challenge in Formula One, teammate to Ayrton Senna at McLaren. In 1990, the vital ingredients for Formula One success were Honda power and McLaren expertise. Alain Prost had stormed to the 1989 title in a spirit of open warfare with his McLaren teammate Ayrton Senna. For 1990, Prost moved on to Ferrari, so Gerhard Berger took on the challenge of the McLaren drive alongside the most charismatic and intimidating figure in the sport.
You were taking on what has been described as the toughest seat in Formula One, the seat alongside Ayrton. And were you seeing that as a challenge, as a way of measuring yourself? Or
It's a good question. You're very polite. You could also say you've been stupid. Or what? No, but you know, everything went always to my side. It always falls in place. I was always landing in the sunny side. All my teammates somehow was beaten, you know. I mean, yeah, with Mansell in the qualifyings until I had my accidents, he was struggling. But so even on the highest level, I never had really a problem. So I didn't see Ayrton as a problem too. I completely was underestimated his level of performance, and that's why I didn't see any problem to go and join him.
Was there any area where you felt, after joining the team, you felt that you might have the measure of him, or was he superior in just about every department?
Enjoying the life, I can beat him. but on the racetrack, he'd been more experienced.
Yeah.
He'd been more fit to me. He'd been very, very, very switched on through his experience and all this Brazilian way. And the people I met in my time, I think he'd been the best. To be fair, I think in qualifying, when I look to other teammates he had, maybe I've been the closest to all.
Yes.
From a performance point. I just say, listen, work on yourself, try to get better wherever you can, try to beat him when the time is right, and don't see him as an enemy. See him just as he's doing his job as good as he can, and you do your job as you can, and that worked out quite well.
In his effort to match Senna, Berger worked on his fitness and his motivation. It brought occasional moments of success,
And Gerhard Berger has won the Canadian Grand Prix.
but also mistakes, such as the one that launched Riccardo Patrese into an horrific accident in Portugal in 1992.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Well, let us hope and pray that Riccardo Patrese is all right as he clouted Gerhard Berger's car. You saw he is all right, I think.
There was a bit of finger wagging after that, wasn't there? When
Yeah, it was my mistake.
Was it?
Yeah. He was under my gearbox for a couple of laps already. I went into the box, but I forgot that he's under my gearbox, and I didn't show him what I'm gonna do. And so he'd been lucky that he landed on the racetrack again instead of the pits, because he was flying really high up already in direction inside pits. But then he landed on the pit wall and goes to outside. So everything went out okay, but it was my mistake.
Yeah.
Partnering Senna at McLaren had been a tough experience, but Senna had become a close friend. Berger's return to Ferrari in '93 produced little in the way of results. Then 3 races into the '94 season came the tragic weekend at Imola. The death of Senna on the Sunday followed the death of Berger's Austrian compatriot Roland Ratzenberger in Saturday's qualifying.
I've been not that close to Roland, because Roland was another generation. He was just coming up. I met him a couple of days before in Monaco, and was a very nice guy. I mean, yes, was an Austrian, and of course I had an eye on it, but it was too far apart. He was just arriving, and so obviously I was much closer to Ayrton, yeah. But it hits me a lot because it was such a terrible accident. Just when we've been sitting all in the cars waiting for the qualifying lap, and to do a qualifying lap on the limit at this stage it is the hardest thing in racing. And then seeing a colleague laying on the road and getting a hard massage, you know that it's maybe too late. And that's for all of us a disaster to see it.
Your thoughts and your recollections between Saturday and Sunday, so much has been written about Ayrton's mood at that stage and everyone's emotions around the pit lane. What are your recollections about the build-up to the Grand Prix itself?
I didn't realize this at all. I remember well, we walked together to the briefing in the morning on Sunday, and Ayrton says to me, Gerd, next week or in 2 weeks we should all sit together about safety. We should talk about safety. There's a couple of ideas I have, we would like to talk with him. But everything normal. I did not realize any thing. I mean, there's a lot of stories coming up after, and everybody could read everything already before, but I couldn't.
You were one of those who went to the hospital after the race. Was that something you're glad you did? Or?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First, we was on the starting grid, and that's basically my last. When I remember him today, that's how I remember him, because it was very nice. We liked each other, really. And I remember in the starting grid, I was behind with the Ferrari, and he was sitting in the car already, and I was just walking back. And of course, Ferrari driver in Imola, me was very special there. So I got all the fans jumping up and down and waving to me. And Ayrton was looking to me and was loving and was doing like this, like, and you could see we've been friends. He was happy for me, and that's the last thing I remember him, and that's how I like to remember him. Then the next thing was, with the start, we was racing, and I remember when he crashed, I didn't see exactly first, is it him or, because he was still circling when I passed by, and I just passed by, I think it was behind Schumacher, just passing by, and I looked, and I said, no, it's okay, because he didn't look so bad, you know, his angle was not too bad. I mean, in the end of the day, it was the wheel what was the problem for him, you know. Yeah. Then it was the restart, and then I stopped after 5-6 laps, but not because they say I had a problem with it, because I did not realize at all what was, or how bad it was. I just had a damper problem in the back, and I had to come in, and I stopped, and I was just sitting on my bench, and then people came and said, well, Ayrton is in the hospital and he's in bad shape. That was the first time that I realized something serious happened. And that's when I decided to go to see what's going on and not to listening to the usual paddock discussion, to check out really what's happened. So I took the helicopter back to the hospital. We've been there in front of the emergency room, and I was asked if I would like to see him. And I was quite surprised, because an emergency room, you know, and I say yes, and it took quite a while. And then they let us in to see him, and that was a time when doctors were still on his head with what was covered, so we could not really see the head. But we saw his body, and we could stay a couple of minutes there, and that was basically the operation room. Yeah. And I saw his feet and the color of the feet, and at this time I said, well, there's something not working anymore. And that was where I said, well, I don't believe he's still alive. And when I left, then short time after, they told us that he was dying. So don't ask me. I've been there. I don't want to go into any questions, things, because it doesn't change. He had a bad accident. He died on it, and that was my last time together with Joseph, where we saw him.
From that point on, your appetite for racing, did it change? Were things different?
No, I think this is something where how a racing driver is. I mean, we all know, especially at this time, that in certain places you don't want to have an accident, otherwise you hurt yourself or you maybe are dead. But you accept it, and if your friend dies, it's always hard, but happen also on the road, and you don't stop to drive your road car because your neighbor had an accident and died. Of course, for a couple of days I said to myself, well, is it a good time now also to say, well, it's enough, we had a good time and don't hurt yourself, or you would like still keep going? But it was just something where I worked out with myself, and I came to the conclusion that I still would like to go on with racing, because that's what I like to do, and why should I do something different? And yeah, we all know it's dangerous.
Gerhard Berger would head back to Benetton for the 96 and 97 campaigns, his illustrious racing career entering the last 2 seasons. And looking back, what would he regard as his outstanding racing performances?
I would choose 2. One, Adelaide, 1987, where I was fighting for the win with Ayrton. And I remember, well, you know, to be honest, I never liked to train. So physically, I've always been absolutely in the limit. And Adelaide was such a hard circuit with the turbo cars. And then you had sometimes hot days there. And this was one of these. So it was about 3,000 gear shifts on 1,000 horsepower turbo in the city, slippery, 35 degrees, and me physically not very strong. I was leading the race, Ayrton was second on the Lotus. And I was just dealing for a new contract with Ferrari. And I was asking for, at this time, crazy money, and I had to deliver. And I know if I deliver, I'm going to sign my contract. So that was my super motivation on this weekend. And I remember well saying, yeah, I couldn't anymore. I was completely finished. Ayrton was 4 seconds behind me pushing.
And Ayrton Senna has got the racing driver's ultimate stimulus. He can see the man that he's chasing, and he will be wanting to make that Scarlet Ferrari get bigger and bigger by getting closer and closer to it.
I was in front. I couldn't hardly anymore turn the steering wheel, and it was still 30, 40 laps to go. And I said, Gerhard, just keep pushing. Your contract. You know? So anyway, I kept going, and we played ping pong, and we played all kind of games, you know. So Ayrton quickest lap, I completely finished. Okay, put the boost on, put in the quickest lap again to show him that you are just playing with him. And that was going on maybe 30, 40 laps, you know. When he pushed and came closer, then I pushed 2 laps, showing, well, if you won't play the game, I can also go quicker, you know. And it was really such a hard race and gave everything. And I won the race in the end, and it was my hardest race. I think in the end of the day, the best performance I ever had on a car, and beating Ayrton, that all together was...
Yeah.
I think he got disqualified then with brake tax air inlet. But anyway, it was from a performance point, from a sporting point, maybe my best race, and really something I like to remember.
And out of the last bend comes Gerhard Berger. It's a famous, wonderful victory. I couldn't be happier. Formula One couldn't be happier.
1997 at Hockenheim, he will claim his 10th victory. Suffering from a virus coming into the race, Berger also nominates this as one of the finest drives of his career.
I had an operation about the sinus. I've been missing two or three races already. I was full with antibiotics. I was basically not ready for go racing. And I remember Flavio telling me, saying, no, I don't want in this race. I said, well, my contract says I think I'm fit, I want race. So it was in the back a lot of things going on already in a very tough way. And just then we decide, okay, if you go to Hockenheim and you don't perform in a way, we have to cancel your contract, because we find completely ridiculous if you come in this stage and won't race for us, you know, because stay home, stay until you are healthy again, and then we come. So it was getting nasty and bad, and lawyers involved already and things like this. So not nice. And then I was decided that I start in Hockenheim, and a couple of days before my father died on a plane crash. So I had no physical condition, full of antibiotics, just out from the hospital. Flavio putting the knife already on my neck. My father just on the funeral. It couldn't be worse conditions. And then I arrived in Hockenheim, and I decided to tell the press that I'm gonna stop after this year. So that's what I did. Then the team went very upset with me why I am not communicating this first with them and just put them there, all these things. So everybody said, yeah, Gerhard, nice that you are back here. But I could read in every face, what you're doing here. I'm gonna just show them, you know. And I went out, pole position, quickest lap on the race. And I had everybody friends again, and Flavio was again around me, and everything was like I'm the greatest, you know. And things like this, it's something what stays with you.
Retirement came at the end of 1997, but his involvement in the sport didn't stop. He became an F1 consultant to BMW, which gave him a working relationship with one of his great heroes, Sir Frank Williams. He's currently head of the FIA Single-Seater Racing Commission, but before that he was one of the original owners of Toro Rosso, the team that gave a first victory to the sport's new star, Sebastian Vettel.
I thought he has the potential, and we immediately agreed we want to keep him, we want to work with him. And it worked out perfect. And you could see every test improving, speed, commitment, brain, everything together as a good young driver should have it. And finally we saw that he has also winning potential, what he didn't deliver in Monza. And at this stage we know that he has world champion potential, what he also delivered.
Yeah. Your own role now within the sport is as part of the Single Seat Commission on the FIA, which gives you responsibility for what? What are you trying to change within the sport?
Well, I'm responsible for everything between karting and Formula One. How did this come? Actually, I'm just trying to do a favor to Jean Todt, what asked me, say, well, could you help me just to improve the situation? And at a weekday, I say, well, okay, I'm gonna help you. He used the argument to give something back to the sport. What usually the right argument for me is, you're gonna be paid very well. But so let's say this time I failed. But anyway, I'm doing this, and I appreciate it because I got a lot of experience in 210 Grand Prix. I got a lot of experience with BMW and Toro Rosso on the other side of the pit racing. And now I'm getting experience on the structure behind the sport. What is very complex, the way how this is all built up, the different kind of gremiums, the different kind of working groups, and how this all works. So I would say if I go through this, at least I would then say I would have a total picture of our sport, and that's nice too.
Yeah, the path into Formula One is far too complicated now, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very, very difficult to turn this back again. In all this, a Formula One chief looked into Formula 3 and maybe to Formula 2. That's it. So if you're a Formula 3 British Championship or Formula 3 European champion, you was testing McLaren, you was testing a Williams, because everybody of these guys knows this is my future guy. Now he can be in Formula 3, or is it the guy in GP3, or is it the guy in Renault 2 liter, or is it the guy in GP2? He doesn't know anymore. And also he doesn't know the winner from this category. Is he better or the winner of this category is better? So the whole thing is a mess. And in Formula 3, I think we did a big step. We have, again, the Formula 3 European Championship. Yeah. So I think we're in a good way, but it's a long-term process.
Yeah, the task for you is to make sure the top talent and the top personalities get to Formula One. It worked in your case, and thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you. It's great to
talk
to
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Watch all 6 Sky Sports channels on your mobile and online.